Yes. One of the great joys of living in Vermont is the pleasant peace and quiet. One of the things that we're not going to have if we're living in Vermont with ATVs zipping up and down all the time is the peace and quiet. It's no cost to the ATVer to give us non-quiet. But we deserve it as much as you deserve to get around, or think you deserve to get around if necessary. My other thought about it is the rescue squad. Is our rescue squad big enough and handy enough to get way back in the woods and bring out people that have an accident back there? And what happens when you start driving all over the way? Every year you read in the paper about somebody that piled up his ATV here and there. I would like personally to ask everybody to walk all of these roads, and the whole reason of roads and the public usage of some called class 4 roads goes back to the time of King Arthur. Regrettably, King Arthur did not have a lot of noisy things to bother it. And so only people that were walking would get to use the private roads, public roads. Not just the public roads, but the ones that were thrown. Please, let's not do this. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Who would like to go next? Okay, you're close. You're good.
I'm just going to reinforce what the last two speakers have said. My name is Julie Howe, and I live on the corner of Harlow and Oxbow Road. And I'm very, very concerned and opposed to this, mostly for the quietness of the roads. And I've got some significant concerns about the amount of traffic that's going to be driving by my house along the Oxbow Road. The noise that it's going to increase. I like my peace and quiet, and what it's going to do to the roads themselves. They're already getting wider. The traffic is getting crazy on the Oxbow in terms of the number of roads, the number of cars on that road. And so I'm very much opposed to it, and I hope when we get ready to vote that you will take that into account for people who are living. And I live on the trailhead, which I have some significant concerns about, and I don't know how you enforce people staying on the actual trail and not on other people's property and the field that is right adjacent to the trailhead. I have significant concerns about, and I don't know, as I admit, I don't know enough about ATVs aside from they're loud and they're going to increase traffic, but I don't know if Harlow is not part of that road, but the Oxbow is. How do you get your ATVs onto the Oxbow? And what process is that? Is that, I mean, big trucks are going to be coming through and bringing your ATVs? What are the rallies? And how many cars and people are going to come around when we have rallies? And are the rallies going to start at the trailhead, which again would be in my backyard? So I have some concerns about some of the enforcement of all of that as well. So please take that into account when you do the votes.
You did say I could go next.
I did.
Okay, I'm Myra Hudson. I live up on Gee Hill. I grew up in Tunbridge, and I do not ride a four-wheeler or a razor. But I have to say, on our hill, we have a pristine cottage in the woods, and I love it there. And I quite like having the ATVs go by. They're, in my experience, and I understand that this is not everybody's experience, but it is a nice trail, and people fairly infrequently go by, and they're always polite. And I know a lot of people think ATVs are really loud, but in my experience, I don't often hear them coming in time. So I have to always wear a bathing suit in the park now. So I have good experiences with ATVs. I also am out in the woods all the time. I like to go out mushrooming, and I really love to experience nature, and I know that this community that rides ATVs also does, and I know there are pros and cons, and there are dangers and there are bad seeds that wreck it for everybody sometimes. But I really wish people wouldn't get so caught up in the fear that they do start to rob other people their joy of being out in the woods, even if it's not what you would choose. Part of me deeply feels that it's a bit of a culture war, which, you know, you can line up all this logic, which, yes, that's true. I mean, we all, you know, ride around in cars. That's not great for the environment too. You can come up with a lot of arguments to why maybe ATVs shouldn't be out there in the woods, but at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of people are anti-ATV because it's not their culture, and that feels, I don't know, they have a disconnect there. So I would encourage people to be open-minded about other ways in which people get out in nature and find joy. Sorry, so that is all I had to say about that. Thank you.
Next. Thank you.
My name is Peter Anderson, and I serve on the planning commission. I just recently with my wife and I moved here years ago, but lived for 50 years in Sharon, where I was a member of the planning commission and also served as a representative of the Two-Thirds Planning Commission. My concern is with the land use, because really, this is not about roads. This is about how we're going to use this beautiful land that we are so fortunate to live on. And so what I would like to point out to you is that the scientists at the UVM and the Fish and Wildlife Department, ANR, put together a computer mapping tool called BioFinder. And using that, you're able to track the way animals go around the state. And basically, you can see from this, there's a path here east of the Green Mountain that comes down here. If we look a little closer and zoom in, we get here at Bradford. Here we are in Royal here. As you notice, is the wildlife corridor is made up of these large blocks of forest, the green is bright, and the yellow blocks, which are the really fragile connectivity blocks. And one of the wide path up here, Westfairly, Berkshire, etc. But as you get down here towards Stratford, the path kind of narrows, and we all know that the signs on 89 are clear indicators that there's problems there, and then the path swings over here into our town. And so you can see that the animal's goal is to get from the White Mountains to the Green Mountains. They need this for their gene pool, their seasonal migration, etc. And so once they get down and down here, close to these now, as you can see, these animals are lucky to get it off across 89, they come here, and then right smack into the southern part of our town, which is where the wildlife corridor is most sensitive in many ways. So that's really what it looks like with the real close up going here. And of course, we have the proposal is to be vehicles in here. Yep. Okay. So I think one is, remember, it is just PR. This is just for fun. Several people have said, and there's a limited number. You said he had 15 to 20 members in the group. Well, that's 1/2 of 1% of the population, so it's not a huge thing. And I guess my thing is we should make lemonade. We should have a committee of people creating the trails, finding them, make the world's first-class trail system. My real question is why? And that has to do with in April, we were asked, the select board was asked, why you supported and so I'm hoping each of you can give us an answer why I support.
Is there someone else who'd like to speak? Yes.
My name is Betsy Geiser and I live in Tunbridge, but I do own about 2,000 feet of road frontage on Ricks Road. And I wasn't asked for my opinion about how I felt about ATVs coming through. I would hope that this select board, in making their decisions about what roads are allowed, would look at the 4 access points that are dumping into Tunbridge. And when Ian first came to Tunbridge to ask about ATV travel, he wanted to connect Royalton to Chelsea through a corridor trail. And now we're looking at 4 access points, Gee Hill, Ricks Road, onto Button Hill, and I guess Dairy Hill. That seems like excessive. It's not using any trails. It's all class 3 roads. And I just would ask that you consider the effect it's going to have on Tunbridge.
Thank you.
So I don't have a question, so to speak, but I tried to prepare myself for this evening's meeting. I looked all of the websites, could not find the draft ordinance. And I haven't read it. I'm sure would like to be able to read it before I have any comments. Is it available? Is it on the website? I couldn't find it.
There's no draft.
There is a draft ordinance that was presented by the ATV committee to the select board. So when you go on the website, you'll see there's a documents and reports button.
That area.
Under minutes is ATV committee, and that's for their draft ordinances that they developed. Once the select board's had a chance to look at the draft ordinance, it'll be included in the meeting minutes for tonight.
So the select board hasn't produced the draft ordinance.
That's correct. The draft ordinance was produced by the ATV committee and given to the select board.
What's the time frame on that roughly?
So we're gonna talk to the ATV community this evening and get their feedback. And then we're gonna go and take the input from this meeting. And we would hope to have, if we're gonna draft anything, we would hope to have, we'd like to have it out by August 23rd.
Okay,
So-
so that will be on the,
3 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay, and then we'll be in another public on that period,
Well,
on that, or on that document.
I think, no, it'd become an ordinance, but it has to go through a process of, it could get petitioned, it could, there's a.
There's a question about knowing like the select board point of view, personal point of view on this matter.
I'll start. I believe in this process. I don't own an ATV, don't ever think I'll own an ATV, but Ian Benson came up to us with a thought and laid out a plan, rough. We went back and asked some more questions, he came back with some answers, and we thought this is worth investigating. But I believe in this process of a conversation between the community members. That's my personal view. Whether if there was an ordinance that said we could use every road, it would make impact to me as an ATV rider, but I don't think I'll ever have one. I don't see it. But I do care about a lot of concerns you bring up.
I pretty much echo those comments that Tim made, with the exception of one thing, to kind of add to that. I really like this place. I think I'm not really from here originally, but my wife's family is. I've lived all over the world. We settled here on purpose. And there are 2 things that are a challenge. Number 1, jobs for our youth, and that youth to me is 50 and below. So. And we're doing pretty good now that we have high-speed internet on the grid. I mean, if you have the right skill set, you can choose to have a good job. Then you have to have something to do. You gotta be able to flourish. You have a reason to stay. And this was brought up by our youth, as something that they said they would abide by, they would do their best, and you know, as a dad myself, you know, and I don't mean to be paternalistic at all. I'd like to have them be able to do something that they want that allows them to enjoy this great country and this great town. I just, we used a long trail not long ago,
And there's some places there, wildlife that we just do not own. And, so I'd like to see it work. I really would. I hear the concerns. When you say it's gonna be out in the open, I think it can be done. I do know that there are some crazy hotshots out running around now, and ATVs on the roads that we have to do something about. But, you know, when good people start doing good things, bad people, you know, may stand out a little bit more. And that's in general, you know, that's in general. That's it.
I'm here to listen to what you have to tell us. I am opposed to ATV on full length of our town roads. It's a little excessive. I do like how snowmobiles cross our town roads onto private trails, which have written agreements with property owners. But I think opening a full length of road leads to a lot of danger and hazard. And the ordinance that was voted on at town meeting was not what this ordinance is getting. No, no more.
There.
I feel like when I read the ordinance and I hear what some people speak against there are concerned about, it doesn't line up with the ordinance. And I'm willing to give the ordinance a try. I'm willing to support the ordinance if it doesn't work. At this point, I think what's going to happen is if we pass it, I think it's very unlikely that it will be appealed. And when it gets appealed, it'll be a town vote. And I think it's better the town votes on it than 5 people up here. So I think just letting the process play out is actually going to be more than.
Yeah, and I echo what Jerry said. And I said that from the very beginning, right? This is government and town politics in action. You know, I think it's fantastic that we can get together, have a civil discussion about this, listen to all the points. My first reaction, and I'll be candid, I don't own an ATV, but I have property that I allow people to use their ATVs on. But I came into this thinking, the only group that can enact an ordinance is the select board. And we were asked by the club to put an ordinance together to allow people to use ATVs. And our board said, you know what, we don't have enough information about this. Let's warn it and see what the appetite is in the town. And you all know the results. I mean, it was within one vote. So it automatically, in my mind, took the do nothing scenario off the table. You know, we couldn't sit back and do nothing. And what Tim said about the process, I think is true. I mean, if we, and I, right now, I think the ordinance does too much. I would like, if I vote for an ordinance, I would vote for one that's very narrow initially. It's a try it type of thing and see how it works with the sunset clause that says we will look at this in a year and either add or subtract from it. That I think is a good compromise to see whether or not this would flow. Once we get there and we pass an ordinance, then the process allows the town to come back and say, you know what, we don't want it at all. And if you get enough signatures and then at the meeting, you vote to rescind it, it's the end of the story. I just think that's a cleaner way of doing it than for us to deny an ordinance and then go through a messy election next year where, you know, the sides are trying to stack the board with their people so that we put an ordinance out there that you end up voting on eventually anyhow. So just let's go through the process and see how it goes.
I'd like to add to that I'm up for election next year, but please run against me.
Yes. me too.
Okay, would someone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Ed Castor, and I just moved to Johnson Hill Road. I found some fantastic neighbors. And one of the things I admire about the people that I met in town is that it's sort of a respect your neighbors, no matter how diverse your viewpoints. Everybody gets along, everybody comes to the town green, has a lot of fun. And so I just wanted to bring up a number of points because I did a little research on the work that the town planning commission, the ATV committee and others did. And so I just want to say a few things. First, This is recreation versus necessity. If we're talking about one of the points that you raised about needing to get somewhere in emergency, of course, people need Jeeps and ATVs. But this is for recreation for a small club group of people. The next is economic benefit versus risks. I spoke to the director of the new office of Keller Williams Realty in Hanover, who's a friend of mine who sold us our house. And he said, property values, of course, this is just his projection, but he says property values will go down. What will that do for the tax base for the $3 million+ town budget if property values do go down? Legal versus financial liabilities. If a horrible thing happens, like one of the ATV riders hit the car, the 6-year-old girl I saw being led on a horse on Back River Road from Lori Hudson's operation. What if she got hurt? What if there's a lawsuit? What will the town liability be? How much will that be? What kind of insurance can be purchased? And is that part of the plan? How many times would that lawsuit pay out if there was serious injury or death? What would the multiplier be for the annual budget of the town? Enforcement, I read that the captain of the Windsor County Sheriff came and addressed one of the committees, and that our police chief addressed committees, and they basically very politely said, there's no way you can enforce this. If you don't see an infraction, it's as if it didn't happen. And if you were to give chase, the only way that you could give chase would be on more ATVs. Does the town have ATVs for the police force and training to do that? And what if the worst happened? What if somebody who's running drugs up and down Bee Hill Road or Royalton Turnpike gets a couple of ATVs? Now it's pretty much impermeable. Do they plan for that? I'd like to address the point about noise. Somebody put 84 decibels at 50 feet. The National Institute of Occupational Health and Safety.
I think that would be a little, no, thank you. We're good.
Probably 5.
Number 5.
Boys.
Yeah, I really like this. Thank you. David Switch, 95%.
You gotta come up here.
Sharon O'Connor,
And
live in
2
Suffolk.
minutes.
So, 84 decibels, I'm not sure where to go. Right there, at 50 feet. I guess you probably can't read the rest of your notes, but I really like what you were using. Local use versus out of state use. I think that's a really good point too. But my main concern is, I agree with what you said about, giving ATV owners a chance to be out in nature, and I totally like that line of thinking. I'm not so convinced I want them on my roads, where the bicyclists are and a bunch of cars are, and I just think it's a recipe for disaster. But I do agree with what you said about that. So is there anything else you want me to touch on that I did?
Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, thank you all for allowing this time tonight.
Yes, sir.
AJ Price from Royalton.
AJ.
Price. This is something I look forward to do with my daughter, something we can go out and have a good time, enjoy life. I think there's a lot of valid concerns in the town, and I think if they would like to work together with the four-wheeler committee, we could address them then. There's always going to be good eggs and bad eggs, and always going to be pros and cons, so we can work together and make the best of it. I go to my parents in Eaton, Belvedere, right around there. It works for their community. It's something we need to come together and figure out as a group.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Gene Day, I live here in Royal. And one question I have, basically, I mean, there's still lots of questions there. Apparently, the original intent was to have a string of towns, where you have a trail. But now, 2 towns are turning down this. I'm not sure what's gonna happen with Tunbridge. But now it's all coming down to Royalton, and from what I understand, it's all coming down to this section over by Back River Road and Johnson Hill, and that area. I may be wrong. This is what like I said, there's a lot of information that still has to come out. But I'm just wondering if other towns are not part of this, and I have heard that apparently the club is opening up, they're asking anybody else from other towns, wherever, they want to come on in, and pretty soon we're gonna have who knows how many people going up and down our roads. It won't be just on people's, it won't be just off in Woodson, it'll be on our roads where people drive. It's busy enough on back of the road. And you all know the shape of the roads. I mean, our roads on the front page of the Valley News this spring because it's such in bad shape. I know it's spring. And it's constantly being worked on. And if we're having ATVs going up and down, who knows how many times. I mean, it's gonna be really, really hard to live. And I just have a lot of concerns, and I still think there's a lot of answers which have to be answered, the questions which have to be answered before we make a final decision. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Laura Barber, I live in Grand Royalton. I've got a couple of concerns other than like everyone else, I'm concerned about noise. But what's the town's legal liability if they make it, if they allow vehicles that are not street legal to travel along extended stretches of road, not trails, but roads in the town? If there is an accident, like I think there will be, because there are going to be ATVs going from D Hill and Happy Hollow over to Bridge Street, right in front of my house. And there's no room there. Those ATVs are going to be sharing Route 14 with motorcycles, cars, trucks, everything. And that's not going to be safe. What's the town's liability going to be when someone gets hurt? And they consider the town is going to is someone consider that? Then they're all, as someone else brought up, you're going to have many more people getting further out into areas that are hard to access. What happens when someone gets hurt? What's the responsibility for that? What's the liability for that? What happens if it's going across somebody's property and someone gets hurt? Is the ATV club going to have liability insurance? I also have, I admit, a personal bias. After having taken care of a 12-year-old years ago, that was riding on a four-wheeler on private property. And
Yes, sir.
I'm Ryan Aiken. I'm from North Pomfret. I have a state registered, VASA registered, fully insured ATV. I wear a DOT helmet. I have a 4-point harness. I have headlights, taillights. I feel like they're safe machines and I support the ATVs. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Dakin. I live up on the top of Post Farm Road, Stones Road from Key Hill, a couple of Stones Road, maybe. But I have some personal feelings about liability. I travel Key Hill every day. And it's a standard narrow enough back road that other cars are, close enough that adding the ATV traffic is not a great idea. I think the idea that we're trying to prevent people from enjoying nature and get out in the woods on their ATVs, it's a completely separate issue. This is talking about allowing ATVs on town roads. It's not like snow machines that cross the road. They'll be traveling on the road, and there's liability issues for individuals, there's liability issues for the town. And just to circle back, it is not what was originally asked in the vote. It was about connecting trail systems in towns, and there at this point are no other towns.
So they're asking to use our roads solely. Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left for this, so that's probably 7 speakers, but I'm just trying to do a little scorecard here. If somebody else like to come on.
Yes, I would like to speak to.
Thank you.
I'm not going up there.
She recently broke her head.
It's nice to see you out and about.
It is nice to see you out and about in this.
Well, you know, I had. Because we see a call and what's going on here, and I feel like just walking in the room, I feel like we have the haves and the have not. I personally believe that people are standing up giving misinformation. Nobody's challenging that. I think the people voted to give this a try. Now, it may have changed because the other towns have worked their way around it. Once again, on some misinformation. I believe that we should try to make an attempt to make this work a little bit. Okay, it may not be worth it. But from what I've seen and I've checked them out, these machines are expensive. These machines, if you have one, you probably have a coupon. So means you have insurance, okay? You can have a head-on collision on the Oxbow on the road. You can have a head-on collision on Royalton Hill or Davis Road. Okay, the town of Royalton is not liable for that in 2 vehicles, okay? And you're not gonna be, for years, we have been able to cross like with snow machines. But now snow machines have become so expensive. So, you know, we can't really recreate. And one of the most appalling things about this is that the Herald noted that the Conservation Committee says they don't want us in the woods. We pay these taxes for all this beautiful land. And I think we should make an attempt to try to make some of this work. And I think it shouldn't be done with misinformation. If you really want to see drug deals, you should come up by my house. Okay? It's probably not owned by the town of Royalton, but everyone thinks that it is. And they use it as the Grand Canyon, where actually it should be Mount Everest, but it's not Royalton. Is trash, there's all kinds of bad things going on up there. So,
Thank you.
but we try to live with it. I think everybody else should, and I don't think these things are as loud as you think they are today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add, there is some misinformation.
I'm not.
And I'm more,
Over there, there's misinformation here.
no, and
Something.
there are some huge assumptions being made. There's some huge assumptions that are being made before an ordinance is even drafted.
And I understand that, but let's make an attempt to try.
Yeah, okay.
And when the facts come out, please make them the facts.
Will do. Thank you. Okay. Yes, sir. Please come up. I don't
My name
know.
is Caleb Bingham from South Burlington, Vermont. I'd like to address a lot about the noise. And these things are sometimes noisy, but they're no noisier than a on and off road dirt bike or a loud truck or a 15 or 16-year-old kid driving their loud car down the road. Not any different. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, I think, where'd he go? Seems right up. Letting us be recreational use. I can see going down the road being a big thing, but we're trying to cut around that, and eventually, maybe if we work together and we talk to people, we can get more things opened up and not get on so many of them.
Thank you. Okay. We have a lot of people here that haven't spoken. This is your opportunity. Chris, you start calling people.
Jim, just for the question, what point do you want the committee or myself to speak?
We're gonna speak to the committee. in 15 minutes, it goes from like a public discussion to a public meeting at that point, and it'll be, the commentary will end. So it'll be directly with the meeting. Okay,
Will we be able to hear what the committee has to say?
sure, yeah, they're gonna be right here, so, sure. So. No one else?
I mean, so should I speak on behalf of our?
You can.
Okay.
Come on up.
In 2 minutes.
You got 2 minutes.
Ian McKenzie, Oxbow Road, you know, like a lot of people, you know. We're here because we love us now, because we're welcome, because we're diverse, because we let diversity into our town, that's why we love this place. If we have a fight and this doesn't go well, obviously no one wins. We want this to be something where we can all feel good walking away from this. A lot of the things you guys have had to say, the speed, the noise, potential for accidents. Dr. The last thing I want is an accident and someone die out of it. We don't want, you know, 50 or 100 plus machines. If we ever got to that point, we have spoken as a club, and we would also shut it down. So we want you guys to know that we're in the same boat. If it came to a certain point where this is out of control, we obviously know that that's beyond what we envision. What we envision is where most of us as neighbors can ride to each other's house or can ride to the neighboring town. Or maybe some of our friends, we all want to take, hey, let's start at this point, come to town, let's show them what our town has to offer. And then we can, you know, get up in the hills. We have a number of really beautiful spots that you just don't really get to them. I could probably take some of you guys to places you have no idea if these even existed or the things you can see or where to get to. So the big thing is it's compromise. You understand that? The big list of town roads, that was more just as a discussion point. We don't want all those roads necessarily. We want to have a discussion about it. And risk mitigation. We are all ears about trying how do we mitigate this risk. And we're neighbors, just like I don't like hearing 100 motorcycles go by my house in a while. I'm the same boat here, but I understand how sometimes you gotta let those trespasses go, and then how that we, you know, all get to enjoy this part of the state the way we do.
Thank you. Done? Yes.
Well, I can speak for right here.
Can you identify yourself? Not everybody knows you.
David Bruce, live on, I would also like to say the select board as an opportunity. I think I was on the committee the right before. I don't know as we need an ordinance. I'd like to see the town open up everything to residents only. Let the residents, and rather than force the 18 years into a section of town, let's open it up and try it for a while. I mean, you can do that, just say, okay, we're gonna open up all roads. Local people, residents, for residents only. You can ride a rig, you can't cross the main roads, you can't cross the state highway, but you can ride in your area, your neighbors, back, and I think it gives us a good beginning to see how this thing would work.
Thank you.
That's my.
Sorry.
So I was on the committee, I'm not speaking for the committee, but for me to get a little bit more education, I went out to someone on and literally going through the woods. I can't believe we're going like more than 5 miles an hour, maybe up to 10. Even on the road, I don't think we made it over 15, 20 miles an hour. And we went for probably a 30-mile ride. We saw 3 different species. That was it. So the concept of thinking you're going to need 30, 40 machines in a day is not going to happen.
And I just want to add that Gidget was part of our emergency management team at one point, so. That's another perspective. Thank you. Anyone else? We're winding down. We'd like
Chair, I move we both support.
a second. All in favor? Right here, I'm gonna last call. Anyone? Okay. All in favor? Aye. All right. Sandy, you're the chair of the ATV committee.
I was.
You live in Telephone.
Yeah, I live in Philadelphia.
So I'm interested to hear, your feedback, and I'm especially, and all of the entities you engaged to come up with what you.
Yeah. So there were 10, the select board chose 10 members. Actually, we were all the members that wrote an interest in being on the ATV committee to write. Our deliverable was to write an ordinance, and that was our deliverable. 10 people made an interest to the select board to do it, and in the end, the select board chose all 10 people to be on that committee. And I think most everybody is here in this room that was on that committee. And we did have a mix of people who were for and against it, right? So that way it wasn't a committee that was just all for people who wanted the ATV ordinance in place, so that we did get to hear and the other issues that were concerns to the people that are opposed to that. So we did that. The select board also gave us a model from VLCT, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, as well as the statute that the state of Vermont already has in place for ATV use out in our communities in the towns. So a lot of people who are talking about it, we followed those rules and regulations. So the committee ended up adopting the VLCT model. We talked to the planning commission, the conservation committee, chair who came and presented the same stuff that you've heard today on several occasions. And we had other individuals who came on in Zoom or came to our meeting and spoke what their concerns or things were for the ATV. And those are all on the ATV website, which is on the town meeting. Like every piece of paper we got, all the questions that you have asked is actually things that got brought up during the 9 weeks. We met every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And we had public comment time, and then we worked on creating the ordinance. So all 10 of these members, I would say, we unanimously created the ordinance that is given and was presented to the select board. So all of us talked about the different sections. You'll see on the ordinance, again, it's a template down so that we could test it and see how it worked. So we have a limited thing, what we could not in 9 weeks, and that was the biggest thing we couldn't do. So what we asked from the ATV club was to give us a list of roads that they were looking at, trying to decide what those roads were going to be, because there was no way we could come up with a compromise and in the short amount of time that we had to do it, right? So that's like the brief of meeting on the website. You can hear every one of the meetings, as JoJo was saying. We did not address liability and all of that. That's the select board's duties. They have underwriters, they have lawyers. We use the same, like I said, templates that were approved by the state of Vermont and the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns. You'll see in there that we did address issues that was concerns that brought up, so that you have to have a helmet on, you have to have a seatbelt on, you can only drive on the roads on a limited, on the speed limits, things like that. So we definitely did try to come up with a compromise. Between okay, so I can tell you.
Point of order, this is that public they're addressing she's facing you, addressing the select board, and the interaction is.
Oh, you want me to sit down and face you?
No, I made a note of it though. So I have a couple of questions. I
Yes.
think the select board should have a couple of questions.
Yes,
Did you get feedback from our police department?
yes, sorry, I forgot to mention them. So we had Loretta Stallmaker came twice. Our police came back road. She's absolutely was opposed to Route 14 and, you know, being on the main, but we have to get permission from the state of Vermont to be on Route 14. So I want to let everybody know that, and we can do, it's not a request that we could as an ATV committee. The state of Vermont decides whether you can be on Route 14. So like Laura, when you're talking about Route 14, there can't be people on it. You can vertically, once we know their sites, you can vertically request, the club can, to ask if they can make a vertical crossover to get to another trail, but that's down the road. I mean, I don't think we're anywhere close to that. We have the captain from the Windsor County Sheriff's Department, Claude, I can't remember his last name, Claude.
That doesn't matter.
And Claude came to talk to us as well about policing and being able to police on the road. So the club actually has funding from their membership to be able to hire the Windsor County Sheriff's Department to be able to police the roads. So Chief Stallmaker said, you can't report it, they have to see it. But then when we talk about self-policing, then it would be that they would make a report to the police or to the Windsor County Sheriff, who then would follow up with that issue. And then we also had Demi Bowles come and speak to us about the class 4 roads and the class 3 roads. And so he's the highway foreman for the, if we opened up the roads and use them, how that would be and affect the roads. And he actually, his comment that can be heard is that he feels the snowmobiles are worse for the roads than the ATVs. So that was what Demi said to us. And the class 4 roads are really not a road that's maintained. And what the club was trying to say is the hope is they will maintain them.
I just wanted one clarification is that we do allow in a special request, snow machines to, if they lost access to a, say, a 50-yard or something, a yard section, they do come to us and say, can be used.
Not
And it's
highway.
So, not the stop.
But not the highway, not Route 14.
Right, not that, no, like a back road, like.
Correct.
They might say, can we bump out,
Yes.
go up 100 yards and turn back in? And it's usually under careful consideration, we get feedback on it, just one clarification. Did you happen to talk to the rescue?
No, we did not.
That's,
And who are the members of the committee? Are they here?
Yeah, so does everyone want to stand up that's here, then can say their name and introduce themselves? Okay. And I can name the people who are here then.
You guys have any?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so.
Peter Anderson.
And then myself, and then Pamela, Fischelin was on there. She's a professor at the Vermont Law School, and her husband, Brad Sick. I'm actually not sure. And then, Rick Schumann, he was the other person. So I think that's the people that aren't here tonight. So 3 of the people aren't here.
I know,
We should just thank the committee.
yes, thank you very much for the. Our timeline was condensed, and our timeline was condensed for a reason. It was because should it go forward, it gives the ATV club a small window, because it's not an open-ended year-round thing. It would be confined to a certain month. And we just wanted to follow a procedure that made sense. Does anybody else have on the select board have a question for the ATV committee? No. So,
Instead, I do want to say in the ordinance, we had a discussion about listing certain things that were brought up by the planning commission about safety and that. But instead, we just put in the statute, just that line of where it's in there. Select board can add the different ones. There was some talk about, should we spell it out? Because a lot of people aren't able to see the actual statute, so you might want to do that. That's the section on safety and operation, so you can look at that, but we literally used the rules and regulations of the state statute for there.
So now that I know who the people are on the ATV committee, I would like to ask them personal questions. Okay. Bob, how did you go into this and how did being on the committee sort of maybe affect your thought process? or
Well,
thinking?
I kind of look at, I own this, I actually bought a spot. We're on the obstacle road, one of the few people that are on it. I have ridden down the road. I'm ridden down there with my child, my grandchild. I kind of looked at it as trying to be open-minded about the whole process. And how can an ordinance become responsible and respectful for both parties? My feeling on it is not all the roads should be open. I think it should be a 3 or 4 year plan. I think the select board, and that's why we had trouble deciding on which roads. But I believe the select board should open up some select roads. We're only talking May 15th to September 30th. We're talking 4.5 months.
Can you say those dates again?
May 15th to September 30th.
It had to do with the hunting season.
Right.
We are cognizant of the
And months.
And months.
and mud season.
So you're not talking year-round riding on number one.
Right.
And if you read the ordinance, you know, you've got ATVs, you can be fully insured, you need to be registered with the state of Vermont. You know, are you gonna have issues with, yeah, there's gonna be issues with anybody when it comes to any type of recreational vehicle. So I really believe that, I hope the select board will consider opening it up as a trial for the first year. You're not gonna ride a sheep. By the time this is selected, it's not gonna happen until May 15th. Evaluate it, you know, after the first year. And if certain roads weren't working, then you close that road and you open up something else. But to say it's been in the water is because you don't like ATVs. It's unrealistic. I think it's closing an opportunity for myself. I mean, Lewis talked about how he rode with his grandson. I mean, what a great thing for a grandfather to do. You may not want to do that with your grandchildren. You want to do something else. That's Dave's opportunity to spend time with his grandchild. And what a great way to do that in a respectful, safe manner. And that's what I really hope you guys will consider. Thank you.
I did want to add, that reminded me, what I didn't say was, we did put not a sunset clause because we had an attorney on our committee who, we had a long discussion about that, but like put an end date, like you have to decide. So at the very end, we put like it will needs to be relooked at every year by the select board and determined and changed or added or deleted or edited in any way so that each year is looked at too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Peter, you had anything?
Just that there was a dissenting group of us on this committee, and if you're interested, there's some information over here about reasons to oppose it, which include, you know, almost everything people have talked about. And the some safety, 5 people die every year in Vermont, et cetera. So there are a lot of reasons to it. If you're interested more about the wildlife corridor, that's there too. But it comes down to it was not a unanimous decision.
We've never
Well-
anticipated it was.
Well, we never voted on it, but I want to say this, Peter, that I would respectfully disagree that when we decided on every section in the ordinance that we presented to the select board, there was a majority of the people on that committee who agreed to the language and word in that section. And there's like 13 sections in there.
I'd like to hear from other ATV members. David,
Yeah,
do you have anything to add?
well, I went into it without online. Trying to want ATV here, so I guess you would probably all pick our class. But in listening to both sides and the whole thing, that's why I made the suggestion that I did tonight. And I think that trying to force this into one particular area. Yeah, I voted in favor of everything that we proposed to you. But my personal belief is that we should, all the taxpayers in town have access to the roads. I mean, it's no more dangerous for an ATV than it is for a guy sitting down the road on a bicycle or any other vehicle. I mean, there's always going to be some danger. But I think it's a mistake to try to force this into one particular area of the town. And I think by spreading it out and making it residents only, I think. I mean, the town used to be wide open. When I was first, when it was wide open, and we never had any problems. We never had any issues. I don't remember, most of is still here. I don't remember exactly why we closed it down. It doesn't make sense to me to close it down.
Thank you. Ken? Very first meeting we had, Sandy asked us to introduce it. That's what we did. I went into that and I said, there was an open loan. And throughout the whole process, we had the open loan. When we come to Brad, second and his wife, they were dead set. They didn't, I mean, they live on a class 4, and their biggest concern is all the traffic, because Ian's first proposal was eventually we want to connect with other towns, not immediately. And I can give you an example of Williamstown. It took them 5 years to connect with Washington. So, and that just barely happened. So it's not going to happen. This club just started this spring to really officially save our club. So for people to think that he's going to immediately go through all our landowners and all that, you know, it's, I heard it over and over, everything that Ian said, he was getting slammed by a couple of members. And there should have been a club address, but we'll get done in a moment. And with Dave opening up all the roads, that was one thought. But it's like, it looks like there's a ton of roads out there, but it's only because we had potential of landowners we've talked to, that we could connect here, there. Jim Hudson's the perfect example. I mean, it's going from Key Hill over to Happy Hollow. They've got another landowner permission over on Happy Hollow. So it's just going and going and going. And we're talking to some other that possibility is it. But I went into it with a total blank idea. To the program, they're super loud. I got Harley to go by my hand, you can't hear. And they're constant. These ATVs, the people that are saying they're so loud, John, I totally disagree with him. You should actually get in one and ride and have them go up and by here. Because it's all false information, it's true. So. Okay. Yeah.
Who else was on the committee?
I think we know you.
I mean, I can talk about ATVs all day, so because there's a lot of things I'd love to talk about, a little details, the little comments that we got from certain people, or, you know, what data did we look at, what data is available, what should we try to get for data? And a lot of these are all great ideas to figure out how do we compromise and how do we risk mitigate this situation. So again, just trying to, there's a lot of different stuff that I'd love to sit down and talk with every one of you, like, why do we try to do this in this area, or do this in this area, you know, make sure that we aren't necessarily on back road. I don't want to be around the horses, or certain areas where we know there is density, we don't want to be there. And it's a chicken before the egg horse cart thing, where you know, as we started trying to figure out, do we can become a club? Is it working and going to Wilton? What's the goal? What's it not gonna be? At the end of the day, we saw it as like, we don't get some sort of little piece of town roads to at least say that it's worth putting all the work into to connect all the private lands. Unfortunately, we're not necessarily like Swanville's, where the day, you know, pastors are closed in the winter and they can make their connections a lot different. ATVs at the end of the day, we're gonna need little pieces of roads here, there, or something. Just, that's our goal, is to be everywhere, but we need to start somewhere.
So there's gonna be compromise.
Oh, yeah.
If anything happens, don't worry, it's gonna be maybe a bigger compromise. You care, but.
Yeah, maybe a question of the ATV committee chair. Or not committee chair, the ATV club chair. Going into this process, I envisioned the ordinance being an envelope that would allow linkage between existing trails. And someone coming to the select board and saying, we'd like to use this stretch of town road, so we can go from A to B. Not that we're going to use the town roads to create the trails, to go back to the private landowners to establish this. So in my mind, it's completely backwards, because I don't think we can adequately address the safety concerns of opening up a road based on not knowing where the trail connections are going to be. So I would look at that and say, I wouldn't be able to improve anything that big. Because I would say, for example, this is me speaking, I would deny any application for a use of town road that didn't have line of sight from point A to point B. To me, that's addressing all the dangerous issues that are on the table. And if we did that knowingly, then the liability would be ours. You know, that we allow, you know, ATVs on, and we've got some roads where it's dangerous for cars, but they were built, you know, 100 years ago, and we're not going to change it. Happy Hollow, Ricks Road, Johnson Hill, there's places where you come around the corner, you don't know who's coming at you. So I would say that wouldn't be a good place to start. So how do you feel about that? If we were to look at it and say, we're going to narrow it down to point contact for trails that you have already maybe agreements with landowners.
Yeah, something we can look at later. Or, you know, not like here to try to solve it all, but it's that's how we also envision building it piece by piece, making sure it checks all boxes.
We were also, Byron said that we could get there.
Have all members. No. You haven't heard from you. Who has not spoken to the committee? You heard from me? Did you?
I went into this, I voted for it, but I had some concerns. Noise was one of them. So, we don't stand up.
Yeah.
Okay. Noise is one of them, so this one reason why I chose to be on the committee. But I also educated myself and talked with people, actually went out myself with people and realized that those weren't issues. I'm gonna hear the Harley Davidsons way more than I'm gonna hear these CPDs going by the house. They're not gonna be driving fast, not gonna be driving as fast as the vehicles on our roads. Some of these ATVs are almost the size of our little electric vehicles. And everyone's wearing helmets, there's roll bars, there's seatbelts, and that's required. Required right now, I think partly to be licensed, I know that statute's a little odd, but you gotta be insured and registered. I don't own an ATV, I used to snowmobile myself a lot and have a lot of great memories from that. I just think families should have that opportunity and see how it works. I mean, if it doesn't work, then you can address it. So.
Thank you. So,
I'm happy to talk about my personal thing. I just did sure. So I just want to say that I came onto the committee as well. I've never, ever been on an ATV in my entire life. And so I went out on an ATV on Dylan McCullough's land, and I just wanted to thank him for that, because I went all over on trails on his land that I never would have been a part of and been there, right? Now that was on somebody's private land. We did do a little bit of road travel to get to another section, but it was enjoyable for me, and I would have never walked all of those acres to be able to do that. I wish I could say that I could do all the walking, but I can't anymore. And I liken it to, I'm really involved in the Tunbridge Fair and the bingo hall, so if anybody that, I've done it for 25 years. And I was the one that advocated to have the golf carts to come down the main way in the Tunbridge, because elders couldn't come to the fair anymore because they couldn't walk it or do anything. And that was pretty controversial at the time when we asked to do that, to have these golf carts come down in the middle of the fairgrounds, and how disruptive that was going to be and everything. But it brought all the elders to be able to come back to the fair again. And for me, that's my issues are always elder issues. And so for me, it's getting older people out and back into the woods of where they came from. It's not just the younger generation that you talked about, but it's the older generation. And it was an enjoyable evening for me. And we saw deer and an owl, and so I know we talk about the migration of animals and everything, but how's it working up in Northeast Kingdom? How's it working up in all the other places? So I looked at the vote, not that there was just one more vote. Everybody kept always talking about that. I looked at, there was 185 people and 184 people. And that's like half of our town. Half of our town wanted it, half of our town didn't. So how do we become inclusive and include the half of people who also want to recreate in the woods in a different way than other people? And that's, to me, what a good community is being able to have it work for all of us, not just for a portion of us. And I think having an opportunity to do it and do it in a respectful, conservative way, and then branch out, gives the club time enough for them to be able to talk to landowners, continue to build those relationships, open up different areas. And then in the meantime, you're seeing how it's working with the combined thing that you have.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we're going to conclude this meeting a little early. Because we heard from the APD committee, we heard from everybody who wanted to speak. We're going to go back.
Can I ask a question?
No.
No question.
No, not you, somebody else can. I'm joking. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm now, I'm from South River, and I live in Oxbow. I don't know, I guess enough about the ordinance, but what I'm really more interested in is the, I think Sandy said something about a sunset clause, or that there wasn't one, but maybe there was something like that set up. My concern is living on Pleasant Street, which is at the bottom of Oxbow. If there is a lot of traffic funneled in there going to Worthy Burger or Crossroads, I have 3 kids who don't listen to me at all. And they're probably, I think, and cats, when Pat just got run over by fast traffic. On Pleasant Street, I want to know more about the sunset clause, and I also think on the planning commission, we brought up the potential of another town vote after we see how things go, and to see if, again, it's a complete 50-50 in our town, or if people have, after having had time to experience what it is like for ATVs on their road, the people who are dealing with it directly, if we have then an ability to say, this is not good for us anymore. So I would like to know more about that, or clarity on that.
So we're going to wrap up our meeting. Second. Like Chris, any further discussion? I just want to thank everybody. You know what? Very few things. We've gone to town meetings where nobody shows up. You take away the free table at the transfer station. Change the the name of the mascot. Everybody shows up. Yeah, the ATV committee, ATV potential ordinance, and a lot of people show up. I appreciate this. And I was all half joking about running against me next.
But I'm sorry, when are you guys gonna answer the question? When I didn't, I guess I wasn't listening at the beginning. When are we going to hear you guys?
August, I'm gonna sunset this by August 23rd. We will have either an ordinance or not. So,
Check the minutes.
Check the minutes.
agenda alone,
um,
So it'll be on the agenda, August 23rd agenda.
It's not, it'll be on the agenda.
I'm not sure what their meeting was. So, yeah. It'll be. right.
Whatever that select board meeting is, it'll be on the agenda.
Yes,
If you'd like the agenda emailed to you, there are sign-in sheets in the entryways. Please leave me your email address, and when it's on the agenda, I will email you that in.
And we have a new town website, check it out. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Oh, to say.
Thank you.